In the tapestry of life, where every thread holds a story, America in black and white emerges as a haven for the voices echoing through the heart of our communities. In this podcast, we wade through the rivers of our collective experiences, celebrating the vibrant hues of change brought forth by the whispers of hope and the roars of action. It's more than just a conversation. It's a journey into the heart of our society, illuminated by the light of those daring to dream and do. Join us, and let your voice be the melody that guides us toward a dawn where every color finds its place in the masterpiece of our shared destiny. Together, let's paint a future brimming with the positives that dwell in our minds and the actions that shape our world.
Good evening, family. Welcome to another episode of American Black and White. I am your host, Charles King, and I want to start off with our Black history reflection on George Washington Carver. George Washington Carver stands as one of the most brilliant minds in American history, a scientist, botanist, educator, and humanitarian whose genius reshaped agriculture and empowered generations. Born into slavery, Carver rose to become the leading researcher at Tuskegee Institute, where he pioneered crop rotation systems that restored depleted southern soil and transformed the livelihoods of Black farmers. His innovations with peanuts, sweet potatoes, pecans, and soybeans were not merely scientific achievements, they were acts of liberation. Carver believed that knowledge was a tool of freedom, and he used his gifts to uplift communities, restore dignity, and expand economic opportunity. His legacy reminds us that creativity is a form of resistance and that brilliance, when rooted in service, can change the world. Now, let me introduce our guest for tonight. Welcome to another powerful episode of American Black and White. And tonight, we continue our mission of amplifying the voices, stories, and brilliance that shape our culture, our communities, and our collective future. Tonight's guest is a man whose life journey spans continents, cultures, and callings. Born in Brooklyn and raised in Guinea, West Africa, he carries the rhythm of the diaspora in his spirit and the vision of a cultural architect in his work. He is a project manager, a Scrum Master, a global connector, and the founder of Gallery Miriam, a platform dedicated to elevating African artists and expanding the narrative of African creativity worldwide. Through exhibitions, cultural exchanges, and his signature Art and Senses dinner series, he invites audiences to experience Africa not as a distant idea, but as a living, breathing force of beauty, innovation, and legacy. Tonight, we welcome curator of culture, a steward of heritage, and a bridge between worlds, Jean Patrick Guichard. Hello, sir.
Hello, sir. How are you?
I'm excellent. Welcome to the show.
Thank
Welcome,
you. Glad to
welcome
be
back,
here.
that is. So, is there anything you'd like to say to the audience before we get into the show?
Uh, want to say thank you for joining. It's a pleasure to be here, and I am hope and I know it's going to be an exciting conversation. And welcome.
Yes, sir. I definitely appreciate that. And as I get into this, let's start with with your life story and your early influences. Can you tell us what do you remember most vividly about growing up in Guinea?
Ooh, no, now you're taxing my memory bank. What I remember the most about growing up in Guinea is the fact that we were all connected.
Mhm.
Uh, there was safety. You can roam anytime at night. You will not be bothered by anyone. Uh, my parents had a group of friends. They were always together uh, with family. I mean, it was a tight knit community, so to speak.
Mhm.
Uh, what I remember the most also is the fact that it was always, even though it was under dictatorship, but there was always that connection. And yeah, like I said, uh, safety. It was childhood. It was good times. You don't know any better when you're a child.
That's true.
And my parents were the upbringing was strict, and it was like when their friends are here or they start talking about something, mom would just look at me and say, "This is not your conversation, and you have to get up and go." So
Right. Exactly. Get out of grown folk mouth.
exactly.
Uh, how did living between Brooklyn and West Africa shape your identity?
I primarily grew up in Guinea. I used to go to Brooklyn. My brother and I used to go to. My mother used to send us to Brooklyn to keep us connected with her side of the family.
Mhm.
So I visited my aunt and her kids, my cousins, and basically during that transition, it kind of shaped because sometimes you find that you're in between two worlds because okay, when you come to America, you have to adapt. It's totally different than when you're back home. For example, uh, when I visited my cousins in Brooklyn, my aunt, they would get phone calls at 11 midnight and something. The phone would ring. That would be unheard of in Guinea because everybody knows after 9 p.m. nobody calls anybody unless it's an emergency.
So 9 o'clock is the cutoff.
9 o'clock is the cutoff, and it shaped me even today. My phone goes on do not disturb at 10 o'clock.
Mhm.
So it's kind of that still stay. Some things still stay with me.
So when you think about that, as when you were a young man compared as you came up to this point where you are now, what are some of those differences, that you were able to manage, transform, grow into, or make work for you?
Um, like I said, I had to adapt.
Hmm.
So things I would take offense to when I first came, for example, in Africa, people are strong on greetings.
Hmm.
Greeting someone that you just saw that you see on the street might take you 10 minutes because they'll ask from the grandparents down to the chicken. They
Yes,
ask about everyone,
right.
okay, before you start doing anything. Over here, people will start talking to you without even greeting you. So that still bothers me somewhat because someone will send me like a text message. It was just a message, and I'm like, well, can't you just say hello first, or something? But it's something that I have to remind myself that I have to adapt. On the other hand, when I go back, people in Africa mostly, there's no personal space.
Mm.
People are always like this. So when someone comes too close, I take a step back, and then I have to remind myself, oh, I'm back home now. It's there's no personal space. Everybody's in your space, in
Mm.
your face. So those are the things that we always have to be mindful of. A little cultural. What is the word I'm trying to find? Cultural. The word is coming in French, but not in English. Some cultural nuances that you have to pay attention to.
Mhm. So then what you're saying though primarily is that you learn the greeting when you first just meet people that you were so used to that in changing that was one of those things that you may have adapted but not all the way because you still are not understanding the sensibilities of that.
Yeah, I'll give you an example. A lot of expats that go to Africa somewhere or go to France or something, they to Europe, um, but especially Africa, they kind of always think, why is it that some things are not being done even though I asked for them to be done?
Right.
And I tell them, I said, when you go there, you have to greet everybody, not say, "Oh, hey, y'all." No, that doesn't work. you greet everybody one by one, and then you can start your day.
Right.
So if you come and you don't greet, you say, hey, y'all, and you go, even if it's your secretary or admin assistant, you ask them to do something, it's going to go in the round basket.
Mhm.
That's it. Because they take offense to it. They said, okay, what's wrong? Am I invisible? Can I greet me? What is this?
Mhm. Wow.
Yeah.
So, what lessons did your mother's work in the Foreign Service teach you about culture and diplomacy?
Okay. My mother was a public affairs officer, and she served in Africa, India, and France. And what I remember, what she taught me, was always been about art. She was always putting up some art shows, some exchanges between artists, uh, some musicians, and there was always those type of people around the house. But that started in I would say started in Guinea before she joined the foreign service, because Miriam Makeba uh, was always at the house. We used to go to her house on the weekends when my parents wanted to hang out there. Send us to her house. Uh, she was married to Kwame Ture, which is in Stokely Carmichael. So
Mhm.
spent time with him, had good conversations on Pan Africanism, activism, and all that other stuff growing up. We always had those people. Sometimes Miriam Makeba would come through with Nina Simone, and so it was
Oh,
always, yeah. So there was always artists and art around the house. So in that aspect, that kind of affected my direction, in the sense that I went more into public. I would say citizen exchanges. I went into citizen exchanges and cultural exchanges, as opposed to my brother, for example, who took after my father and went into economics.
mhm. Oh, wow. So now that's kind of different. So, just from the cultural perspective, and you adapting now to, as you're a young man and you're adapting to Western culture, um from what you were used to, do you still implement what you knew from the culture of Guinea compared to here in the Western world?
The cultures were not. That's hard for me to answer because I was in both.
Right, I
Even though I
understand.
was in Guinea, my mother's American, my father's he's a Guichard, so that's a different. Was one of the well-known families in Guinea, so it kind of, I would say that yes, I was either Africanized and Westernized at the same time, so it's all wrapped in one. So to me, it was really not saying, oh, this culture, that culture, but it's mostly, I wouldn't say that it's cultures, people, habits
Right.
that make the differentiation between things. Some things it's okay, some things are not. And also, it shaped my personality to come to accept and not accept certain things. Uh,
Right. I guess that's a really fair assessment. I really like that because I'm just thinking, primarily with two different cultures that have a lot that's in common is what I was thinking, and that maybe there may be a few things that was just different that you adjust to and you make it happen is what I was actually getting at.
yeah, it's different. For example, if I talk about schooling,
Hmm.
from first to from first to sixth grade, it was in Susu, which is a local language.
Right.
Okay, had to do mathematics, chemistry, and all those things in that language.
Hmm.
From sixth to 12th, it became till graduation. It was in French.
Oh,
But
wow.
yeah, so when I was there growing up in the school, you learn how to make things. You learned how to make bricks. You learned how to farm. You learned how to do things. It was sort of like what's happening now in Burkina Faso. You got involved in shaping and developing and doing things, developing the country. You're involved. We didn't have, since there was an embargo, we didn't have books.
Mhm.
The teacher would come talk, and he had his book. He always talk about about the subject, and you wrote and retained what was said. So during the exam, it's not like, oh, you got, let me study for a book. You took your notebook and you read through it, and whatever you remembered, that's what you gave. So when I came to here to go to college at San Francisco State,
Mhm.
uh, I didn't have to take notes
Oh wow. And
because
I
I
did.
remember I would sit in class. I record everything is registered in my mind. They come exam time. I just
Just blow them out the water.
because that's the training that I had. It was go you went by memory. You didn't have any books to rely on, so that's
Uh,
what you had to do.
wow. See, now that's impressive. So, in growing up, were you ever told about, you being special, or, from the educational perspective, that you had some gifts that maybe a lot of kids did not have?
Mm, I would say yes, no. I say
Okay.
yes, no. For example, in Guinea, you had five large families, and mostly were issued by from I should say well-known families. Mostly by issued from the colonial era,
Oh, wow.
meaning by that they had French ancestors or European ancestors or something
Mhm.
uh, like that. Uh, you had the Guichards, the Curtis, the Macaulay, um, Faber, and some other ones I can't remember, but there were like about five of those. But in those, you did not make a difference between you and everybody else because people intermarried.
Oh,
So it was the same. There was no saying, "Oh, this is your this and that person is less gifted." Everybody was
yeah.
connected some way or the other. Even on the religious side, you had Muslims, which comprise of probably 95% of the country, and well, 10%, 90% of the country, and the rest of the 10% were either Christians or animists.
Mhm.
But if it was when it comes to Christmas, the church is full. Not only of Christians, they're full of Muslims too.
Mhm.
So when it comes to uh, uh, Muslim holiday, Islamic holiday, someone is having like the Tabaski, one other ceremony. Everybody, we all go there because in the same family you can have a Christian father and a Muslim mother, and the child would decide which one he would take. Oh,
Okay.
they say you're going to be a Muslim or Christian, but they decide who is going to take. So there was really no way for you to say, I have something against Muslims or I have something against Christians because one of your family members is. So in that way, people were connected as well. So it was difficult to say who was who. For example, you would have a friend. I have a friend that's named Mohammed, but he's Christian.
Mhm.
I have a friend. Her name is Colette, for example. She's Muslim.
Oh,
So, so, so it's hard to go by name at some point, because that's just the way things are. And I think that was done because under a dictatorship, we became one because they say you had one common enemy, for example. So we had to guard yourself, and that's who you had to guard yourself against. So people stay connected to God against that.
well, see, I think that makes, that's what makes growing up culturally, I think just when I look at, I'm the outside looking in, but that
Uh-huh.
makes your childhood when you were growing up, that sounds so exquisite, but it also sounds like you were already prepared when it comes to being understanding people, getting to know people, and being more social, because all of that other stuff, there was no such a separatism. And so when you just think about now, as you grow, as you are the entrepreneur and the man that's doing all the wonderful things that you're doing, especially the art, I mean, like, how did you adapt to this separatism that's actually taking place in America?
That is still a difficult thing. For example, when I came in, I went to college. I went to San Francisco State, and I wanted to live in Oakland.
Mhm.
And folks were telling me, why you want to live in Oakland, because there are lots of blacks there.
Wait, but you're black.
And these were from Africans.
Oh wow.
So, and I was like, well,
Oh wow.
when I look in the mirror, this is what I see. I'd rather be around my people
Right.
than otherwise. But come to realize is that same divide and conquer mentality, because Africans said, don't trust Black Americans, African Americans, because they're this way and that way, and as well as they tell, don't to African Americans, don't trust Africans because they're this way or that way.
Hmm.
For example, I was explaining to someone yesterday. I said, actually, it was a debate on Instagram, and people called me all kind of different names,
Hmm.
only because I said that, in my humble opinion and experience, when I go to a job interview, a job site, I see that Africans are more accepted than African Americans, and I said I think it's because they do not have that uh, the slavery and Jim Crow baggage.
Oh.
So
Okay.
they're less threatening, and plus they're ignorant. They don't know about any of those things
Right.
until they told.
Right.
Uh, I did not know much of what slavery was like when I was in Guinea, even though I came to visit family here, until I went to school and I started learning it. And the only time people knew about it, how it was in Africa, is when the series Roots came out.
Right.
That they had an idea of how it was for things in America. So Africans come here, they don't have that knowledge, they don't have any of that, they don't have that attitude that you can clearly understand that some African Americans may have, Africans don't have. So they feel less threatening. And I said that's how they took over Stone Mountain.
You know, let me just tell you this, because that answer that you just gave to that question is so deeply rooted here in culture here in America, that's so creating a divide that's such a problem. But it's amazing, that in your experience, that this is something that you have experienced and you've seen it, and to just speak that, I just hope that people can understand exactly the point that you're trying to make. Because I can imagine that there were folk, as you say, on IG with this debate that did not get the message that you were sending out.
I was called all kind of different names. They even talked about my mama and everything.
Oh my
but,
God.
but I always encourage folks. I always tell folks, familiarize yourself with the subject.
Mhm,
Don't go off emotionally when someone says something. Try to find out why they say it.
mhm,
Why? What's the experience? What in life has they have they experience to make them say such a thing?
mhm.
Try to understand. Then you can decide if you want to accept or not, accept or reject.
Right.
But the important thing is trying to understand what the person is saying to me.
So, which African countries had the greatest impact on your worldview?
I would say Guinea because that's where I spent most of my time.
Mhm.
Uh, but I traveled, I went to school in Senegal and also lived in Cote d'Ivoire. Through work, I was able to visit most of sub Saharan Africa except Angola, Namibia, and Mozambique, Togo, Benin. Those three I did not set foot in, but they're still alive. So, what influenced me the most, I would say Guinea, but every time I went to a different country, I learned something new. I don't do the tourist stuff. I want to mingle with the natives to know, eat what they eat, do what they do, sleep where they sleep, and stuff like that. And it's not only Africa. I would say, for example, I went to China on a tour. I left the tour bus and went to the and was asked where I can go. They say, oh, you can go to the Pudongs. So Pudongs is the old city.
Right.
So I walked to the Pudongs. People approach me. I don't speak a lick of Mandarin. I don't know if they were speaking Mandarin or Cantonese. I don't speak a lick of that. And none of them spoke English. But since I had a magazine, I pulled out the magazine, and by pointing to pictures, we were able to understand each other.
Okay.
So they invited me over through gesticulation, and through magazine. I was invited to their house. I ate, took a nap, and got up, continued the communication. After a while, you start understanding what it is they're saying, and they walked me back all the way to the hotel.
Wow.
So those are life experiences that I seek to enrich myself.
Man, there's a lot of people that could use the culturalism that you just explained because I think sometimes it's really it's easy for a lot of people to start instantaneously throwing out judgments and things of that nature. You know what I'm saying? But I mean, but the cultural experience that you're talking about is one that most people really um they gotta do some work on that.
Hmm.
Because I mean, I think that's really a great story to tell. I mean, like, it's look, especially at them dinners that you throw. I mean, that's great to talk about something like that.
Oh, you can
You know,
imagine what we talk about.
see, that's what I'm talking about. Um, when did you first recognize the power of art as a cultural connector?
Oh, I think it was. Oh, and I have to think way back when. Um, I think it was in Ivory Coast in the 1980s, from 83 to 84,
Hmm.
followed by my mom being posted in the Congo, because that's where I saw that she was doing a lot of cultural events. And I saw how people got connected through those cultural events. Um, and everybody can find themselves in a piece of art.
Hmm.
And seeing how the artist would explain the art or not explain the art, or how people interpret the art any way they want to, based on their background, their knowledge, their culture, and everything else. So through that, I noticed that people get connected. And if a country, for example, growing up in Guinea, we didn't have any arts. It was banned because it was like, that's being activist. Because artists are also considered activists because they always paint what's going on at that moment or express what's going on at that moment. Either it's through painting, through poetry, through music, through everything. So basically, everything was censored. So if something is censored, that means that the powers that be are against it, and they don't want people to get connected in that manner. So Therefore, that's when I noticed that when I left Guinea, that people rallied again around the art, and by rallying around the art, that was like a connecting point for most people, any level of society.
Mm. So let's transition over to uh, your life in education and intellectual development. Can you tell us first what drew you to major Black studies at San Francisco State University?
Um, as a child, I was an avid reader.
Hmm.
My mom would ask me if I wanted what toys I wanted for this or that, and I said I just want books. You know, I don't want any toys. Just give me books. That's fine. And one of my father's aunts, her name was Blanche. Uh, she liked books, so I would always get her books, and we would read, even though she read. Her books were more like those romantic stories and stuff like that from the old days, from the Harlequin series. But it was mostly books. So when I got to college, I wanted to study business information computer systems.
Hmm.
I took a few classes and I was like, you know what? I'm not a scientific person. I more into letters, language, poetry, whatever it is. That's uh, my thing. So I looked and saw that there's Black studies, and it talks about everything Black, whether it's in America, diaspora, Africa. It taught everything about that. So I said, okay, I'll major in that. And plus, I wanted to rush out of college myself, so
Yeah,
I kept keep changing majors. So I just wanted to get it done with.
I know that's right. So how did your academic training deepen your understanding of the African diaspora?
Well, I would say that it was not only the academic training; it was the academic training in some aspect because through Black Studies, I learned a lot about what's going on, what went on in America, and what's going on in America, and how why things are the way they are. Uh, that combined with my upbringing in Africa, it was easy to it was easy for me to say, hey, there's a gap between the African culture and between Africans and African Americans, and let's try to build a bridge between the two. Because if I understand the African Americans and I understand the Africans, it's my job to educate the Africans. Hey, these folks went through a lot, and they're still living and thriving, and it's because of them that you're able to be here doing some things. And I tell the African Americans, I said, you do not know, uh, you do not know certain things. For example, there's some parallels between the cultures.
Yes.
In Africa, everybody sits up front to greet people coming or walking by or communicate with folks. When I was grew up in Brooklyn, everybody was up front on the stoop, talking to everybody.
Right.
So those similarities. Nobody was in the backyard.
Right.
you know. So I kept on pointing those similarities, and one of the similarities I said that most of us uh, came from were taken from a matrilineal society.
Hmm.
So coming here, and that is enforced. Of course, you also have the Jim Crow and all the laws and all these laws to break up the black families. But the black woman has been the backbone of black society.
Yes.
And that stems from being matrilineal, matriarchal in most of the places in Africa where folks were taken. So
Mhm.
there's still some blood memory there that reminds them, okay, this is why this is happening. So when I express that, for example, I'm like, no, you are talking about this is not true, but you have to prove it. They had pharaohs in Egypt. I said, yes, but they also had queens. So, and I said, most of Africa, I did not particularly talk about Egypt. But if you go to the Akan Ashanti society, they're matrilineal. The kid took the mother's name, not the father's name.
Okay.
Yeah, so there are a lot of societies like that in Africa. And you see here, a lot of kids take their mother's name and not the father's name.
Mhm.
So there's some vestiges of that. But since people can connect the two, it's not necessarily seen as such.
Okay. Wow. Which scholars or thinkers influenced your intellectual journey?
Oh, I can't say if there was a scholar or a thinker. It was a whole bunch of them. Yeah, I majored in Black Studies, so there were a whole bunch of people that that influenced. But to pinpoint one single one,
Mhm.
I can't do that. And I'm trying to remember what other books that I read that really influenced me. I cannot even remember the title. They're all up on in my library. I have to come back to you on that one.
Oh no, but that's fine because I think for a lot of us, because especially when we do Black History here, we do a 365. And so, a lot of times people, instantaneously start out and they always talk about, the named people, you know, and not really thinking that if it starts at home and you have a mother and father that's got such a great influence on you, that they too are mentioned in that same era, not comparing them, but they're mentioned in the same era as well because they actually projected and pushed you to get to the point of where you are.
Hmm.
And so, in just saying that, like for myself, in just thinking about that, I could think of several scholars, just like you're saying, but I would be more in help to not think of it for me from the scholarly perspective because I think my upbringing, from grandparents, parents, that taught me so many things, especially when it comes to connecting with people, that it's not about who they are, but it's about how you get to know people and you get to know things and how you get to project the things that the two of you may have commonly that can actually push you higher regardless of the case. And so that's the unity part. And
Hmm.
so and then when you think about that though, and I know that it's said from
Yeah,
scholars and so forth, how would that how does
I,
that interact with that?
I would say that where I grew up,
Hmm.
we had, like I said, we had a Kwame Ture, Stokely Carmichael.
Yes.
I grew up around Miriam Makeba.
Oh wow.
There were artists, folks coming in like Nina Simone coming around.
Hmm.
So, and there were a lot, and then going to different, following my mother to different countries like Ivory Coast, and she's putting on these programs. And you had all these uh, artists and all these thinkers coming for different programs,
Mhm.
and you would hear them speak and do things, and that would that's why I said it's difficult. But just like you said, you cannot just pinpoint one,
Right.
because in the schooling also we were taught critical thinking.
Whoop, ding, 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 ding,
Okay,
ding.
we were taught critical thinking, and so in the sense that, like, some people I talk to about different subjects, they will say, this author said this, that author said this author said that. And my question to them, but what is it that you think about what they said?
Mm,
Okay. What thought have you given what they said?
mhm.
What is your conclusion? What is your synthesis of what they said? That's what I'm interested. How did it touch you? How did it uh, steer your vision of the world?
Mm-hmm.
What feelings do you have about it?
Mm-hmm.
That's always what I ask, because it's good to quote folks,
Right.
but quoting folks don't necessarily mean that you understood what they were saying.
Right. So I want to ask you this because, and I know now this is kind of like just gonna move just outside the box here, outside the
Okay.
box just a little bit because you said something that was so critical in these last few shows. We've actually talked about this about critical thinking from the era in which we grew up. This is one of the things that we had to understand. And so it seems like now that that part has been taken out of education and it's dumbed all the way down. What is your opinion of that?
I think that it needs to be brought back.
Yeah.
For one, is critical thinking, quantitative reasoning needs to be put back in the civics need to be brought back, put back in the curriculum, because people are just walking around, and only knowledge they have, and only thing they're interested in, knowledge they have, is what they see in social media. They think that's the truth.
Right.
Anybody can post anything and they say it's the truth. It reminds me of that commercial I saw. I can't remember what company it was, but it was this there was this ugly fat white man that was saying that he was coming to meet this young pretty girl, and the neighbor was asking him, "Who is this?" And the girl was like, this little white girl was like, "Oh, it's my boyfriend. He's a French model." And you could see the look.
Oh my God, I do remember that.
You remember that commercial? So I was like, don't believe everything that's on the internet. Give it some thought.
I do remember that commercial.
Yes.
Oh my God, that is so funny because oh man, you know something because like I don't know if you know some of these streaming channels when the ones that do commercials, they play a lot of those old commercials, but that one they haven't replayed. That is so funny though, as you say that because when she says he's a French model, they were looking like what?
Yeah, I know, right? So yeah, they have to put critical thinking back, and I mean, if not, we're going to be a lost cause. If you look at other countries, they're surpassing us in education because they have all that in it. In civics, people are not happy; they protest. They don't only protest; they go against the government when they feel that they are being oppressed or things are not fair. You look at the French farmers. If the French government wants to put out a policy they don't like, they go and dump all their merchandises in the middle of the city, all their farm, all their harvest in the middle of the city as a protest. So people take action. Uh, Over here, it's kind of like, I think it's purposely done to dumb down people, to not know their civil rights, to not know how to think for themselves about different topics or different things that these politicians will spend their time lying about. And you can just listen and say, make it make sense. It doesn't make sense.
Those that get so far into that it turns into a cult, they will never understand or never want to hear the real truth.
No, that's true. But they could be made, though.
Hmm. That's true.
Yeah.
How did your studies prepare you for the work you do today?
The studies I did not prepare me any for the work I do today. In most aspects,
Mhm.
the aspects it prepared me today is on the people level, not necessarily on the what you call it, not on the job level.
Right.
In the sense that it allows me to connect people, to understand people, and work with people in ways that mainstream doesn't do.
Mm.
I'll say, for example, I'm lifting this up a little bit uh, for it to breathe. I was setting it down on the table. For example, uh, I work as a project manager in Scrum Master. That's my full time. You have a Scrum guy that says things have to be done this way. And if you get a team that's not familiar with the agile methodology, people come and say, this is how it's supposed to be. So, and they insist, not understanding that insistence breeds resistance.
Oh,
So I come in, the team is not familiar. I explain to them why it's important and, say, let's do it the way you want to do it at first, and then adjust and adjust along the way till we get to where we want to be. So that's a different approach. And then it's learning people when to speak, when not to speak, when to correct, when not to correct. For example, one of my neighbors was walking by the other day, and he introduced me to his wife and said, uh, this is Jean-Claude. He's an artist. My name is John Patrick. I'm not an artist. Okay. So, and I greeted the wife and I said, thank you. Hey, pleasure meeting you, and this and that. And a friend that was out there with me, I was washing the car. He was like, well, why did you agree to what he said? You didn't correct him. I said, there was a time for everything. Did you see the pride on his face when he was introducing me?
so
Why would I take that away from him by correcting that little mistake?
right, right.
You know, allow him to that moment. Allow him to have it.
Mm-hmm.
Later on, when he's by himself and he mentions it again, I'll say, hey, no, actually, my name is John Patrick. I'm not an artist. But at that moment, as he was introducing me to someone that's important in his life, his better half, it is not the place for me to correct.
Right.
So on the work front, that's also what I do. That's what my people training has taught me to do.
So, what gaps did you notice in how African art and culture were taught?
Taught?
Yes.
Where I grew up, it was not taught, so to speak. So there was a huge gap there.
Mm-hmm.
But in going out to different exhibits, learning from different people, rubbing elbows with people that have PhDs in African art, and through the dinner series and being with folks, I understand, I see the gap, and I see where the gap is even with those that have PhDs, because it's still taught from the Eurocentric point of view, not the African point of view, because the African would describe it differently than the US would describe it. So that gap is there. I always say, for example, when a European comes and presents a mask, and he's told something about the mask. He's not giving all the information about the mask because he is not part of that culture, and there's certain things that cannot be told.
Right. Okay.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So an African explaining it will be able to give you all the background and then some. Then
So
you will not find in the books.
okay. So the purpose of the backstory, where you can't tell it all, is how you have to infer the origin and everything about that piece and how you move forward,
so to speak. But I always say that one has to go on the ground in Africa, mingle with people, understand the culture, and then you can understand the art.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about your professional journey here as a project manager. How did you first enter the world of project management?
When I graduated from college, I moved to DC from San Francisco. My brother was living there at the time, and I started working with these companies that have for-profit or non-profit that did work in Africa. Development. It was African development projects. So it was either related to expanded vaccination, child survival, uh, community asset mapping, you name it. It was a whole bunch of projects. So I started there.
Mhm.
From there, I was able to travel to different parts of Africa doing monitoring, evaluating projects. Sometimes I had a budget of 2 million or something. I had to develop projects worth 2 million and go before a board and tell them why I think this project has to be funded. So I'll let the outline, I'll explain what the project is, why they need to, and so forth. So in that, I started managing those type of projects. The way I got into IT is that one time I had this lady from that worked at USAID, and she was like, "JP, we have a project in DC. This person, this company is not following any of the regulations, and if you either you come save it or we pull it."
Mm.
So I went to the company and I saw what they were doing. I said, "Oh, this is an easy fix." So I put everything back on track. The project was linking. This was under Clinton. It was linking 8 African schools in 8 different countries to 8 schools in 8 different states in the United States,
Wow.
and for them to be able to communicate and share curriculum. This is when only thing you had was Skype, mostly, and some other rudimentary stuff. It's not all the technology that we have today. So I traveled to Africa, made sure that the computer labs in the school were built to standards, and traveled here to the different schools in the U.S. to make sure that you know they had all the communication stuff they needed, and that's how it. So this project was a success. There were some hiccups, but it wound up being a success. And then I stayed on as a project manager, and for that IT company that had government contracts. That's how I got into IT, and that's what brought me all the way to what I am today.
So, so what skills from your PM background, that's your project management background, translate into your work as a curator?
Oh, that's a tough one. Well, I would say that the way I manage being curating, it's not a complicated one. My life as a project manager makes it easy for me to work on art projects because it's still managing the same way and ensuring that things are done on a timely basis and communicating with the artist and making sure that things are on track, communicating with the gallery owners about space, about dimensions, and everything. So it allows me to organize everything in a sense. Uh, Get project management experience allows me to what you call it allows me to organize
Mhm.
all the processes before exhibit opening happens and all that communication, all that's tracking and stuff. Yes, so I would say in the sense, yes, it does help that way.
So, what is the most challenging project you've ever managed?
Art of project management.
The art of project management?
No, which one is it? Doing art or doing IT?
No, this is a part of your project management.
Ooh, the most difficult one that I worked on over as a project manager has been with one of the insurance companies.
Okay.
Uh, they acquired a different company, and they were federally mandated to have everything transferred to their company. But they signed the scope of work 3 months late, but wanted the same deadline.
Oh no.
Yes. So it was working from 6 a.m. to sometimes 1 a.m., sleeping a little, getting back up, and continuing. I mean, the whole team did that for 4 or 5 months
Wow.
to did that. At a certain point, I was like, I can't do it anymore. I quit.
Ooh, look, y'all were burning some oil.
Shoot, the oil was funny. We were burning the pot at that point.
Wow. Ooh, now you talking about getting all the work.
Yeah,
Uh,
that was
you
the most
know,
difficult one.
so how do you approach problem solving in high pressure environments? Patrick? Patrick?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, there was a connection issue.
Okay.
Hmm.
So my question was, how do you approach problem solving in high pressure environments?
Um, I came to understand that it's just a job,
Mhm.
and I don't allow to be pressured. So I do everything in my power to have everything outlined, scheduled as project manager, everything outlined, scheduled for the next 3 months, and start following it in order not to feel the pressure. So before something goes awry, I'm already aware, okay, this is going to be a problem. But in everything that I do, I always include a little leeway so it does not become much of a problem.
And how are you able
Uh,
to do that?
you know, for example, if you have a work plan and you have to plan your activities you have to plan the activities, develop a work plan, you input. I usually say if something's going to take uh, a day, I put a
Mhm.
day and a half or 2 days
Mhm.
because people applaud you when things are done ahead of schedule, but they frown
Yeah.
when it's late. So
Yes.
if you give him a future date beyond what you think is going to be done, and when you finish early, they say, "Oh yeah, he did a good job." So that's how
Wow.
I build in some time into the thing, and I tell my developers, when you estimate, give an estimate, but stretch the estimate a little bit in order not to corner yourself.
I think that's good advice. What leadership principles guide your work?
Can you
Still
repeat
talking
that,
about
please?
we're still talking about project management. What
Hmm.
leadership principles guide your work?
Being a servant leader,
Mhm.
being a leader, meaning as a leader as such, it's my job to push the team forward and make sure they have everything they need in order to succeed because their success is my success. Uh, I delegate. I make sure that there's some cross pollination between the team members. So in that way, that's how I That's why I ensure that we're all successful rather than me just sitting down as a manager and saying, you do this, you do this, you do this. I let people pick their work, saying, it's your work. Let's prioritize it and let's start working on it. Um, if let's say we have a meeting, I would rotate the team members facilitating them the meeting, for example, so they all feel like they're part of it and not just I'm just here to do this little job. And that also allows the team members to norm. They can talk to each other and not everybody sitting in their own silo saying this is only my part.
So let's talk a little bit about your, your profession of being Scrum Master. What inspired you to become a Scrum Master?
What is what?
What inspired you to become a Scrum Master?
Um, Actually, I was a project manager, of course, and I was looking for uh, I was looking for a job, and then this friend of mine from Nigeria told me, he said, "Hey, I'm teaching a class on Agile and being Scrum Master. Why don't you join us and do that?" And that's how I did. Uh, but before that, come to think of it, I was when the company in DC told me if I could take on another project, I did, and then I had decided. I said, "Oh, I cannot continue just being a project manager. Let me look and see what other methodology and other things that worked." It was a project with the GSA, doing the automated guidance system and stuff like that. So in such, I started looking and I came across Agile and Scrum, and I started putting in those tenets in my daily routine. For example, every week or every 2 weeks, I'll meet with a contracting officer to show her where we are and what we're doing, and the team and I would meet on every 3 times a week to go over where we are before we present it to the the contracting officer. And so communication got ramped up. The way people did things got ramped up, and by getting contracting officer input, uh, we were able to finish the project ahead of schedule. And because of that, I started talking with other managers, and they were like, "This is what we're doing." This was against policies, of course, but I met with managers and talked about what we're doing and what was happening in the company and how things are evolving and stuff like that. So I gave them wind about that, about the agile methodology. So I continued working on that with my next projects and all these other things. But I was not trained as a Scrum Master.
What?
No, I wasn't. I did everything that I learned online. So when my friend from Daesh told me, he said, "Oh, I'm teaching a class. You should join." And he was like, for you, yeah, I'll do it for you for free because you helped me a lot. I went and took the class with him, and I found it quite easy to understand because I had already started doing it. But there's some things that I did not know that I learned. And when I took the exam, it was like I just aced it because I didn't even think that I was going to pass it because I said, I'm not sure if I'm answering these questions right. But the guy that gave me the exam was like, "You did well. You did 100% on this exam." So yeah, so I surprised myself. But I was not. I was doing it. I was being a Scrum Master, but I was not trained as a Scrum Master. It's just Scrum Master. It was just what I learned through YouTube and some my day-to-day practice. And this
Mm.
was like a decade, at least a decade ago or something.
So, how does agile methodology influence your creative projects?
Uh, the agile methodology usually allows you to change on a dime with way things go with if you're doing technology with the way market is going. In everyday life, it teaches you to adapt to change. If something is not going right, going this the way you want it, okay, let's try this other way. So it allows me to change on a dime. For example, uh, basically it does a critical thing. Okay, this way is not working. Let's try this way. This is blocked. What else can I continue to work on, and stuff like that. So that's what it helped me in a way of curating, working in the arts. It it does not allow me to have a showstopper.
Oh, well, you see, I think that's always good because I think after having to get out there and perform and to get folk organized and together and so forth, I would think that you would want to be organized maybe way in advance for whatever is about to come. Because,
Exactly,
I'm
and
not a
that's
Scrum Master, I just know that I've read a lot about that.
no, it's true because, like I said, working on projects and doing your work plan, you know that when you're doing a show, you have all these things that need to be aligned. You have to have your artist, you have to have their works, how many pieces they're supposed to work on. You have to have it from by a certain date. It has to meet this criteria, this theme, and the other side, you have to communicate with the owner. They have to have an agreement. They have to have all this other stuff. So everything is spread out and put on a schedule, and you just follow through on it until the opening. But if something changes, let's say one artist gets sick and drops out, cannot be able to, or something happened to him, you should already have one on standby
Hmm.
to fill in
So,
the place.
so in those situations, how do you train those that's under you to, let's say, be prepared if, let's just say, you had to be out? What are some of the things that you have to train these people to do to prepare for the next level?
If I have to be out,
Hmm.
hmm, I never had that situation. But in the sense that I communicate a lot with the artists and I communicate a lot with the gallery owners and everybody, we're all on the same page. Whether I'm here or not, should continue. In the sense that it continues if I'm out. Everybody knows what they're supposed to be doing and everybody has everybody's contact to be able to continue what needs to be done.
What parallels do you see between tech teams and artistic communities?
Whoa. I'm gonna have to scratch my head on that one. uh, you said commonalities?
No, I said the parallels between tech teams and artistic communities.
It's hard for me to see a parallel between the two. Maybe someone could, but what first comes to mind is that the artists, for example, the artistic community is free minded, free flowing and everything. But when it comes to tech teams, it has to be structured because you're writing code and you have to make sure that your code could be merged into other codes and other things. Uh, I can't see any parallel between the two, except that no, I can't. If I do try to say it's going to be a stretch. So,
Because like so I'll just tell you the whole premise of this question is what I was thinking of
uh-huh.
is like, the creative process itself, the artistry in general. And so I'm just figuring that when you think about tech teams and you think about artistic communities, that they're working concurrently, most likely in a situation to where it's mutually exclusive, but there's something different. So that's what I was thinking about the parallel.
Okay, in that sense, I can see that there's a parallel in the sense that that tech team, I would say mostly the designers.
Okay.
For example, they have to come up with new designs, new things, how to make life simpler, how to make the UI beautiful, the user interface beautiful, for and easy for people to use. In the sense, they are creating some form of art in that sense because uh, you go on some websites or you go on some apps and you say, okay, this is not pretty, it's not user friendly, I'm not understanding it. And if there are different things on it, your eye will say, mm-mm, this is bothering me. So it's the same thing. It's the same thing with art.
Right.
The eyes love beauty, and the eyes love symmetry.
Yes.
So if something is not symmetrical on an app or website, or is going to throw you off, and you're not going to have a good experience with it. And it's the same thing with art.
So, how do you foster collaboration among diverse stakeholders?
Art or project management.
Art.
Art.
Hmm.
Um, in Atlanta, it's been most of my time in Atlanta has been trying to foster collaboration between art folks.
Hmm.
In Atlanta, people here are siloed.
That, that's mildly speaking.
Yeah, people are siloed and very cliquish.
Mhm.
If they don't know you, they're not going to come.
Nope.
As opposed to when I was up in DC, I have see someone has an event, people just show up.
Yeah.
I heard about. I'm coming up to see what's going on. Oh, I don't know this person. I'm not going. So it took a lot of what it took to collaborate was the Art and Senses dinner that I had, in which you bring different collectors and different people from different genre, different parts of different society together to focus on art and the artist and have good food music and let the guard down and say, oh, it's okay to come out of the city perimeters, for example, um, and talk about things. But that's how it's been to be able to foster that. It's just to foster collaboration. It's to bring people together and show them that there is something common, that we have something in common, and we have something in common, and talk about art and let that be the focus of things, not personalities or group or something like that. But on the other hand, is also one has to allow themselves to be known within the community. Not only for me, I have to make sure that I'm not siloing myself as well. That I have to
Right.
go out and reach other groups. That I have to go out and meet other people, and not just stay siloed in my own. Because it's easy to say, "Oh no, I don't want to be bothered with them because they don't want to be bothered with me." But it's to make the effort to go out and meet. It's to make the effort to go to different things that even you don't know anything about and talk to people. Whether it be a show at Spelman, Clark Atlanta, or the High Museum, or wherever it is going to be. But it's meeting those people, introducing yourself, and talking to them about what is it that you do, and getting to get known like that. That fosters collaboration. So when I talk to someone, call someone, say, "Hey, I want to collaborate on something. I would like to do something
Mhm.
with you." Or, "Hey, I'm having a whole bunch of gallery owners at my house for dinner. Would you want to join?" They say, "Sure, you join." And then we talk about, they come, we eat, talk about what we're doing and what we want to do. And in that sense, we can move things forward.
See, now, let me just ask you this because, as we, with that last question about fostering collaborations like that, um, you know, there are like several, and I know there are several artists that are out here that, that want to get some looking. They want people to look at them and so forth. And as you say, very much what you said about the cliquish part, which gets to be an issue, in particular places, especially here. Now, before I get into the question, let me just lead into it so you can get my whole point.
Hmm.
Is that when I talk to a lot of people, I talk to them and I say to them that Atlanta is its own place because
Hmm.
I like it. But I will say there is nothing like Washington D.C. when you talk about doing business and networking because it's totally, totally different. Because it's like the whole world opens, everybody's inviting, and everybody's trying to grow.
Hmm.
So when you think about that concept and you think about the silos as you just mentioned, how difficult has that been for you to operate and navigate, or do you just mention what that could be when it comes to other people, when it comes to getting out to people?
Here in Atlanta,
Yes.
it has been a difficult journey, so to speak. Um, I would say, let me say this.
Mhm.
I deal in African art, contemporary African art, focusing on Francophone Africa because of the language barrier. People are more familiar with English speaking artists than French speaking artists because
Okay.
people in this country go to English speaking countries and not French speaking countries for the most part.
Right.
So that's what I deal in. So to get those across, I have a whole lot of art to sell. Uh, but meeting those buyers or those collectors is difficult, has been difficult, not impossible, has been difficult because of those silos.
Yes.
People that know these collectors or this collector or that collector do not want to share because they say, "Oh, he's going to take out of my pie,"
Me.
so to speak. So, and my thing to them is like, no, I'm introducing your gallery, your collector to other options, not taken away from you, but adding to them. Because if, let's say, a gallery owner, I'm working with this, I approach a gallery and say, "Oh, I said, no, listen, if I come in with this, you're going to have other people come in. I'm bringing other people in with me. I'm not coming to take your people. I'm bringing other people that would not come to your gallery because of the silos,
Right.
for example." So it's having those conversations and trying to move things forward in that regards that has been complicated, but I have to keep pushing,
Yes.
and I have to find creative ways to push it, so to speak.
So, what does continuous improvement look like in that art world? Well, in the art world in general.
In my opinion, which is just my humble opinion, uh, artists need to evolve, they need to improve their work. If not, they become stagnant and they keep on giving the same thing. For example, I noticed that a lot of African American artists is mostly the same theme:
Mm.
slavery, civil rights,
Mhm.
freedom, you know, oppression. It's usually those themes that come about. And I always encourage them to do some residency, travel, meet some other artists outside of the country. Go do a residency. I don't care if it's in Germany, France, Senegal, South Africa, Botswana, something, because in doing that, your horizons will be expanded. It's like looking at the sky. Instead of looking at the sky through a window, it's going out of the window to see the entire sky.
Right.
And by doing so, you're going to have new ideas, and you're going to. It's not may not change your technique, but it may shift a little what you present.
Mm.
African artists are good with that, as far as doing residencies, traveling different places, and doing different things and learning different things. A lot of African Americans artists, a lot of them do, but not the majority.
Right. And I think it's not taken away from the creative process, is what you're saying.
No.
But I think that for a lot of people, I think in being creative, sometimes, again, you go back to critical thinking, where you have to learn to think outside the box, and you have to think of a little bit more other than what you're seeing. Because it's like, let me just tell you, I can't paint worth a damn. I'm sorry. But I can't even draw, but I can tell you what I like to see. And if you can draw and you can paint what I like to see, I can guarantee you that is something that is not just unique, but it's gonna make a statement. And I think for a lot of these artists, especially some of the younger ones, because they're good when it comes to just painting in general,
Mhm.
but I think something is blocked up here that won't allow them to go outside the line.
But I don't think that it's just something that's blocked. Is
Hmm.
that they have not gone out of the environment to
Hmm.
see different things.
Hmm.
You see, that's what I would say. If they go out the environment to see different things, that travel to different countries, see different cultures, understand things differently, they would
Hmm.
paint something different,
Hmm.
or they'll improve their painting in that way. That's my opinion.
Well, here's a comment here that just popped up on that. Angela Bostic, she says that I agree. Do you want to say? Do you want to respond to that?
No, yes, Angela, I do. I'm sure that yes. Um, Angela and I work together at ISG.
Okay.
Yeah, so we have a history of working together, and you will not find such a wonderful person as Angela.
Mhm,
And with her, we always talking about how to do things differently,
mhm.
how not to be stopped by someone's point of view or their environment, how to surmount it, and how to take things that come and change it and move forward with it. But,
So let's chat a little bit here about Gallery Miriam and cultural curation, so people can know a whole lot more, get some idea as to how much more into the creative process that you get so deep into this.
mhm.
Tell us what inspired you to create Gallery Miriam.
What inspired me to create Gallery Miriam is the African artists themselves.
Hmm.
I explain. I used to go around to Senegal and I buy art from either Babadi, Kid Ao, Shakti Jan Keita, some other artists, or go to the Congo, buy Mayimba or some other I would buy. But one day I was going through Senegal and I purchased a couple of pieces and then I went to Ivory Coast, and when I came back the artist told me his name is Shakti Jan Keita, fabulous artist from Senegal. You people should research him and see his art. He has a unique technique, and so forth. Uh, he's told me, he said, you know what? You always coming to buy here. You're always buying art. It's not helping. I said, what do you mean? He said, why don't you do something for us? I said, tell me more. He said, why don't you try to do exhibits in United States for us? I said, okay, I never thought about that. So I came back, and there was this gallery that I used to take my work to be framed, Gallery Serengeti. The owner name is Wyson West. And I spoke to Wyson. I was like, hey, Wyson, I have these three Senegalese artists, Babali, Kine Ao, and Shaktijan Keita. They want to do an exhibit. What do you think? He said, "Oh, okay, let's do it." So I communicated back with the artist. Yes, it's a go. This was back in 2011, 2012, or thereabout, and we went ahead and did an exhibit with uh, the three artists, and I called it the three three Senegalese artists. That was the name of the show, and beautiful, a beautiful show, beautiful exhibit. It was my first exhibit I ever put. Wyson went all white, all out in doing things, framing the work and presenting the work, and we did. It was such a beautiful event. And if you go to my webpage, gallerymiriam.com, and you go to past events, you scroll all the way down, you'll see the first one, three Senegalese artists. All the pictures are there. Beautiful work. Majority of the work was sold
Mhm.
and stuff. And then we just continued doing that until I moved to Atlanta. But that's what inspired me to start. It was one artist that asked me, oh, that pointed to me that there are other things I could do other than just buying. And I thank him for giving me that opportunity.
Angela says she's a collector as well.
Oh, yes, she is.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah, she is.
And so can you tell us what does the name Miriam represent?
Miriam is my mother's name.
Okay.
Before my mother passed, we were working on creating the gallery.
Hmm.
And she passed before I was able to open it. And I had another name. I think it was Baobab or something. I can't remember what name I had before. But when she passed, I said to honor her and everything that she did for me and added to my life and pointing my life in the direction that it is now. I said, let me honor her by giving the gallery her name.
So how do you select the artists you work with?
The way I select the artists I work with currently is online. We talk online. I always insist to visit the artist, visit them in their hometown, see the art, break bread, get to know each other, see if there is a connection there other than just art and business. If there is a connection there, uh, we work. Because also, looking at art online through pictures is different than seeing the work in person.
Yes, I
Okay.
agree with that.
So when you see the art in person, you say, okay, yes, let me think about what we can do with this. We can do with this. So that's how I go about selecting the artists. But it's online, or when I travel and I see the work and I talk to them, I said, okay, we're going to try to organize something. Let's do work on something.
So what stories do you hope your exhibitions tell?
Uh, the stories I hope my exhibition tells is how, despite our the diverse nature, how no matter how different we are, now no matter what our background is, we
Hmm.
have one cultural unity.
Hmm.
And if we look at and try to understand, we can see it through the art. We can see that we're all the same.
Hmm.
That's what I wanted to say. Because at the end of the day, this is, let's say, it's a borrowed home. Earth is. We're
Hmm.
just passing through.
Right.
But the art remains, and the art will tell the story of those that were here before.
So here's another comment here. I put it on the screen. Um, I enjoyed the interview, JP. Good job.
Thank you, Auntie.
Oh, your aunt.
Yes.
Okay. Um, How do you balance tradition and innovation in your curation?
Um, Tradition and innovation.
Hmm.
I'm a firm believer that tradition changes. People need to adapt
Hmm.
or they go extinct, just like any animal that just did refuse to adapt to a new environment, they go extinct.
Hmm.
So tradition also need to adapt to the new. And it's the artist's job to depict the new based on that tradition. This is the tradition and this is where we're going now. So if you look at art, you can see that it went from this and it's going this way and it's continuing to go to progress with time, material, technique, whatever it is, whatever is depicted. But they always go from tradition, it could be culture, spirituality, all the way into modern contemporary times.
What challenges do African artists face in the global market, in the global art market?
Visibility.
Mm.
There are a lot of talented young or old artists in Africa. Their work have not been seen uh, by the global population. Beautiful work, and my mission is to try to chip at that little by little to make it seen. Uh, I even collaborate with other curators, other galleries, and say, hey, these people are available. Why don't you show them? Everything doesn't have to come through me,
Right.
you know. So, but for them to be part of that, what you call it, global market, not even market, global uh, visual uh, world, global entity, I want other galleries to present them, to show them. That's my joy. If I say, hey, at least I did something, I was able to collaborate with these people, or at least and to make the connection between these folks for these artists to be shown. So visual is a problem, but also there is also that problem that you also those that collect that can afford certain things or that want to afford certain things have a tendency of zooming in on a particular artist and try to prop that artist up and sell their work for thousands and millions while disregarding others that are equally what you call it good artists.
Right. So in this case, though, with you saying with them not having enough exposure, have you been able to help them to transition in getting the exposure by putting on the galleries? And if so, what's been the changes since you've been putting them on in galleries?
um, from my own gallery,
Hmm.
working with through my own gallery, collaborating with other folks,
Hmm.
there has been some changes, but it's been slow since I moved to Atlanta, so to speak, because of the way things are here.
Hmm.
But I do communicate with other collectors and galleries saying, hey, these people are available. Why don't you look at this art and exchange uh, it that way? So they get exposure in some other ways, not just through me, so to speak. So, and that's what I'm also trying to expand to have them seen by other places by making those connections. And I don't even have to get involved. As long as they're connected and they're doing something, I'm okay with it.
Okay. You got another comment here in the chat. Say, I learned a lot on this interview. Great job. You know who
Thank
that
you.
is?
What you
It's,
say?
it's that's if you know who that was. I don't want to say the name wrong. It looks like it's
Oh,
Paleo.
Salut say yes.
Okay. Um. So, how do you help artists navigate those challenges that they have?
I tell artists, and the way that I help them is either through the connections, but also ask them to, if they have any doubts or any questions about an agreement before they sign it, to run it through me, and I'll go ahead and look at it and make sure that it's kosher. Also, tell them do not send your work to anyone without an agreement, so to speak. And you can always add me as your manager, just in case though they'll know that you have a presence in the U.S. and they are not going to take advantage, because a lot of galleries will go and take work from the artist,
Mhm.
never give them any money whenever it's sold, and never return the work because they don't have any agreement.
Right.
So I always make sure that before anything is done, they have an agreement in place, and I review it and say, okay, it's okay.
There's another comment here that just popped in. Exactly, interview. This comes from Renee Cox.
Yeah.
So, so what about artists here that are domestic? If they want to contact you about their work and they want to get out, do you work with artists that's domestic?
The only work that I've done with artists that are domestic is whenever I have artists coming in from Africa, it's introducing them and making that connection.
Okay.
Because I only work with artists from African artists.
Mhm.
I have not worked with artists based American artists. I work with African artists based in America, based here,
Okay.
but not with African American artists. But I always make sure that they have that connection, they have that bridge, and they can and try to foster some exchanges between them. Sometimes I have one artist here that comes from Africa. I tell an artist or two that are African American artists here, and they come meet and they can work on a canvas together
Mhm.
or try, work together on some things and create that connection, that bond, and make sure that that's done. And eventually, that artist can go and when they want to create a residency, is start having the African American artists go to their hometown in Senegal or any part of Africa and start working with them, and do a residency with them there.
So, what role does community engagement play in your gallery work?
Community engagement
Mm.
in my gallery work, I have not done much on community engagement except that doing exhibits, talking about African art, uh, encouraging artists to contact to go and work with, do things in high schools. For example, having a school, an artist meet a school, let's say the International, Atlanta International School, go over there, talk to kids, work with kids, teach them art or something like that, either that or the YMCA or something. That kind of engagements are fostered.
Okay. Well, Renee just wrote in the chat. She corrected that and she meant excellent interview. This is from Brandon Flanders, an awesome interview.
Thank you.
And Wayne Hobdy has a question. He says, did we lose him?
Who?
Wayne, who did we lose? Could you write the next part of that question in the chat, please?
Yeah.
Um, so how do you measure the impact of an exhibition?
Uh, can you afford me 1 second?
Okay.
Can you afford me 1 second? Uh,
Yes.
because speaking of impact, someone is at my door, and the person at my door is an African that lives in France that does theater and African dance.
Okay.
They're coming in from France.
Okay. So, yes, I'll give you opportunity. Let me let me
No,
just
just give me 1 minute just to open the door.
okay. Alrighty.
Okay, what was your question?
Um, well, I think you've answered that question. The last one I asked was, how do you measure the impact of an exhibition?
The way I measure impact of the exhibition is if the exhibition was well attended and people were happy, they asked questions and all those things about the thing. My goal has always been to introduce the artist to the United States, not to make money or anything like that. Actually, my IT job supplements what I do in the arts, so to speak. But
Right.
my goal is to introduce the artists in the United States. As long as they come and they're happy, they enjoy the exhibits, and people have gotten to know them, ask them questions, uh, they feel happy about it. Uh, that's what's important to me. To me, it's a win because it's not about. At the end of the day, it's not about me. It's about the artist.
And I have another comment here in the chat. Um, Knowledgeable and insightful.
Thank you,
That's from Lynn. Lynn. Well,
Linnell
Lynn
Finner.
Linnell Fenner. Okay.
Yeah.
And final question for you.
Hmm.
Um, what has been your most meaningful exhibition to date?
Ooh, to date, I would say
Yes.
that all of them have been meaningful, so to speak. I can't just pick one and say this one was meaningful and that one was not. All of them have been meaningful to me because the goal of introducing the artist has been achieved.
So, in closing, what is the words of wisdom and encouragement that you like to leave for our audience? Give them some insight, I guess, into art, and tell them how they can connect with you via social media, how they can come to your website, learn other things that you're doing, if you have the time.
Okay, people can find me at my on the gallery website, gallerymiriam.com. They can also find me on Instagram through Gallery Miriam Instagram, or my name, John Patrick Guichard, on Instagram and Facebook. They can connect with me either of those two platforms. So as far as words to part, I encourage everybody to collect art. At the end of the day, we are the custodians of our culture. And being custodians of our culture is always, let me put it to you this way, we're custodians of our culture. And the artists always depict our culture of that time. It's just like a photographer. It's a window in time. And as a custodian, we have to collect. Uh, there's beauty in collecting. When you come in, you see a piece in your house, you say yes, it tells a story, and you can. It does not only have to be paintings, visual. It could be masks. It could be statues. Something that you connect with but always collect. Try as much as you can to do original pieces and not posters. At the minimum, um, at the minimum, do what is the word that they limited editions.
So I want to say this. Well, I have a closing monologue that I'm going to do, but before I get to that, I want to thank each and every individual that has watched the show. And for those of you that are watching, especially on our YouTube channels, if you have not yet subscribed and enabled all notifications to get all of the shows live, as well as to go back and watch all of the great recordings of all the great leaders that have been here, that have left some knowledge that would help to impact you, your work, and the community, I would appreciate if you would do that now for us, please. So, in closing, I want to say this. Tonight, we've witnessed the journey of a man who carries continents in his heart and culture in his hands. Jean-Patrick Guichard reminds us that art is more than expression, it is memory, identity, and liberation. Through Gallery Miriam, through his global collaborations, and through his commitment to elevating African voices, he is building bridges that connect us to our roots and to each other. In a world that often forgets the depth of our stories, Jean-Patrick stands as a guardian of heritage and a visionary of what's possible when creativity meets purpose. May his work inspire us to honor our ancestors, uplifting our communities, and celebrate the beauty of who we are. This is American Black and White. I'm your host, Charles King. Until next time, stay rooted, stay rising, and stay in your power. Thank you, sir, and we will
Thank
hopefully
you.
see you again.
Very much a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir. And you all have a great evening and good night.
Thank you.